And now let's bring in Cardozo law professor and ABC News legal contributor Kate Shaw. Thank you so much for your time tonight. Kate, help us break all this down. You listened to all the arguments this afternoon that were presented. Both sides cited the Constitution repeatedly. The general consensus seems to be that the House managers were more effective at making their argument today. Would you agree with that assessment? And if so, what could Trump's team have done better?
I do agree with that assessment, Lindsay. You know, the House managers led by Jamie Raskin, I think were really effective in taking what could be this sort of dry jurisdictional argument, right? Does the Senate have the power to hold this trial now and to breathe life into it, right? So, of course, they played that 13-minute video that, you know, either reminded people or in some cases probably informed people for the first time of what actually transpired on January 6th. And, you know, they took on some of the consequences of the argument that President Trump's lawyers are making, which is that this trial can't happen now, and basically suggested that the upshot of that argument is that presidential misconduct, even of the most egregious sort, can't be addressed through the impeachment process if it happens late enough in a president's term. So Raskin in particular repeatedly underscored that the president takes the oath of office and is accountable from the first day, from his first day in office until his last day in office, and he repeatedly reminded listeners that there's no January exception from the oath of office. So I did think that he very effectively, you know, used the kind of Constitution, but also talked about the stakes and about accountability. The president's team was pretty muddled and meandering. They, of course, did make reference to the Constitution, but it was at points difficult to really track what the arguments were. It seemed at many points as though the argument was that impeachment in general is constitutionally suspect. And of course, impeachment is a constitutional process. It can't itself violate the Constitution. So there was a repeated suggestion that because what the disqualification remedy does, so remember, impeachment can remove an official from office, but it can also disqualify an official from future office holding, and that's what the managers here are seeking to do. So the president's team seemed to be suggesting that disqualification was inconsistent with democracy because it took from the people the choice whom to lead them. But again, it's a remedy the Constitution itself creates. So it seemed as though they were simply arguing that the Constitution shouldn't make this remedy possible, but of course it does.
Looking now to what comes next, each senator has committed to be a juror in this trial, which will, of course, now move forward. For the 44 Republicans who voted that the trial is not constitutional, are they obligated to now consider the evidence and vote on the merits of the case, or can Republicans still say, listen, we didn't think that this trial was constitutional from the beginning, so legally it does not matter what Trump did and what his role was?
Yeah. You know, I do think that they should, consistent with their oath to do impartial justice. Remember, they take a different oath when they sit as jurors in an impeachment trial. So consistent with that, I do think that they should proceed to listen to the evidence. The jurisdictional arguments were made, and the Senate as a body rejected the argument that it didn't have the power to hold this trial. So it seems to me they should then proceed to actually consider what the evidence shows as to whether former President Trump committed high crimes and misdemeanors, committed incitement of insurrection, and should be convicted and potentially disqualified. But, you know, there aren't any clear rules of the road here. So definitely, if the senators want to say, we are going to vote to acquit based on these procedural concerns, based on the timing concern, there's nothing that prevents them from doing it. But I do think it would be more faithful to the kind of duty that to their duty as, you know, both kind of, you know, judge and jury in this instance, to actually listen to the evidence because the Senate has spoken as to the permissibility of the trial happening now.
And lastly, some legal scholars are suggesting that Republicans may have another tool in their arsenal to potentially avoid a very politically challenging vote. They could simply not show up to vote, thus allowing a conviction with far fewer than 67 votes. What does the Constitution say with regard to that?
You know, it's an interesting question. The Constitution says conviction requires a 2/3 vote of the senators present. So it's not, it certainly, it seems textually possible that if the denominator is reduced because a lot of senators don't show up to vote, well, certainly it seems to follow that the numerator would be reduced. So you could convict, say just the Democrats show up and 2/3, you know, probably all of them vote to convict, then that is, you know, well above the 2/3 threshold. So there's certainly no precedent for it that I'm aware of, and I don't know that any senators have have, indicated any interest in this approach. But it is an interesting possibility, and I think it does speak to, the desire probably on the part of some Republican senators to avoid a difficult vote, but also to avoid appearing to condone or even endorse this kind of conduct. You really didn't hear anything to that effect today. Really, it was sort of condemnation of the riot and then sort of a suggestion that it was independent of President Trump's conduct and his words. But I do think that, there could be surprises sort of around the corner as we head into this week. So I'm not sure anything is off the table at this point.
Kate Shaw, thank you so much, as always, for your insight.
Hi, everyone. George Stephanopoulos here. Thanks for checking out the ABC News YouTube channel. If you'd like to get more videos, show highlights, and watch live event coverage, click on the right over here to subscribe to our channel. And don't forget to download the ABC News app for breaking news alerts. Thanks for watching.